12 years ago, the UP Board of Regents had a vision to develop their true firstborn college that will spearhead national development through agriculture. 12 years ago, at the foot of the Mount Board of Regents had a vision. Edwin B. Copeland, together with 7 faculty and 12 students, embarked on the journey to create the UP College of Agriculture, or UPCA. Through its 112 years of existence, the college has produced over 1,000 technologies and variety of plants and animals, 9 national scientists, over 30 outstanding young scientists, and more than 18,000 graduates contributing to agricultural development. UPCA, now College of Agriculture and Food Science, or CAFS, has been continuously contributing to nation building through its instruction, research, and extension function. A mere 10 years after establishment, the college was able to start breeding works with the production of sugarcane varieties with high productivity and resistance to Fiji and mosaic disease. In the 1920s, the importance of agriculture was intensified and UPCA was recognized as neighboring countries began sending their students to Los Baños because of the high quality of education. In the 1930s, breeds with superior characteristics such as the Burkhala pig, Los Baños Cantonese chicken, and filament cattle were developed. The 1960s was a fruitful decade for research. Makapuno, a coconut cultivar often made into a dessert, was pioneered and perfected. Meanwhile, the Dairy Training and Research Institute was the first in the country to freeze buffalo semen, paving the way for artificial insemination of local carabaos. Along with the establishment of UPLB in the 70s, the college received the prestigious Ramon Magsaysay Award for International Understanding, Asia's counterpart for the Nobel Peace Prize. In the same decade, the C4 plants were developed. The soil test kits were produced in support of the Masagana 99 program, and the mango induction technique was introduced. Continuing the production of quality research outputs in the 1980s, techniques to minimize post-harvest losses, the accelerated fish sauce manufacturing process, and the rapid test kit for the detection of pesticide residue on vegetables were developed. The 1990s saw many new varieties across species or crop types, including Sinta Papaya, the first Philippine-bred hybrid, UPLB Gold, a durian variety, and Doña Amelita, a musaenda named after the wife of former President Fidel Ramos. The award-winning National Corn-Based Farmer Scientist RDE Training Program, or FSTP, was also established around this time and still remains one of the university's primary extension programs. In the field of instruction, the book titled Integrating Sustainable Agriculture in the BSA Curriculum, the UPLB College of Agriculture Experience, was published in 1999. At present, the College of Agriculture and Food Science, or CAFS, continues to be the premier institution of higher learning in agriculture and food science, and remains committed to nation building through its instruction, research, and extension programs. In order to produce the best graduates, all of our courses are outcomes-based education, and continuous improvement of the curriculum is being practiced to meet the challenges of the 21st century. As testament of excellence, CAFS is constantly recognized by different organizations. In research, we continue to implement relevant studies with focus on the 12 priority commodities to address food security. Moreover, technologies are constantly developed to aid in responsible food production. Supplementing these are extension activities to disseminate the knowledge generated to improve food productivity and livelihood of the people. We believe that present technologies will future-proof our food systems. Some of our notable developments are ID-Tech, Coraginam, Plant Health and Pest Clinic, Pest Management Tools and Techniques, Smarter Pest Identification Technology or SpeedTech, Snap Hydroponics, Drone Technology, Rapid Immunofilter Assay for Virus Indexing, Nanofertilizers Fertigrow, Hormogrow, Nanobiosensors, Biochar, we at the College of Agriculture and Food Science will continue to promote and nurture a culture with innovative yet conscientious minds and cutting-edge skills to lead and serve the country and the region. We are one college with one goal towards sustainable food systems.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Aggie, P.2. And for this morning, we'll focus on the phenology studies, crop management, model development for coconut under Project Saray, or smarter approaches to reinvigorate agriculture as an industry in the Philippines. Actually, this webinar is part 2 of the webinar series on the Tree of Life, which is first held in October 2022. Magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat. Ako po si John Brian Ilawas, and I will be your host and moderator for today's webinar. And for our participants in Zoom, can I have a quick message from all of you? Can you please chat where do you come from? Ano po ba ang pinanggalingan nyo na mga lugar sa Pilipinas, or do you come from other places in the world? May I see your responses? Especially, we are live in Facebook and also in YouTube. So I'm expecting that our participation in each platform will be high, and I will expect yung mga tanong nyo later, and of course, your appreciation for our topic this morning. All right. So to keep the ball rolling for this morning, may I request everyone to please open your browsers in your laptops, computers, or even in your cell phones. So we will proceed with a Mentimeter before we start with the webinar. So just plug in your browsers, menti.com, and enter the code flashed on your screens. That is 3409-1810. All right, so please go to menti.com and enter the code 3409-1810. So let's have 2 minutes for you to set up your Menti, and we will proceed to our Menti question for you guys. So then again, our tech team will send the link or the code in our Facebook and YouTube, so you can participate as well. And good morning to our attendees. I'm really glad that we will be able again to talk about the Tree of Life this year, and which is the first episode of Aggie P.2. All right. So while we wait, then again, the code for our Menti is 3409-1810. Okay. I will join then through my phone. So I hope the code can be present sa ating chat box. So that's 3409-1810. Can we flash the Menti screen? Arthur? All right. So the question we have is, ano ang paborito mong pagkain na may sangkap galing sa niyog? Or what are your dishes? What are your favorite dishes with niyog or coconut as one of the ingredients? If not the main ingredient, an additive or a special ingredient to make it more flavorful. All right, we have responses here. May sumagot po ng nata. Wow, bilo-bilo, palitaw. Tamang-tama sa atin ngayon. Bilang sino pa ba dito ang hindi nag-aagahan? Kakaning may latik. So, makita natin lahat carbohydrates. Laging merong isang cup na kanin, glutinous rice flour, kulawo, wow, yung talong na sinunog, yung gatang sinunog, sinugno, biko, buko pie, gata sa laing makapuno, palitaw, wow. All right, so we have 13 responses. I hope others can join as well in our Mentimeter. But I guess our responses right now are fine and really encapsulates our palate for coconut. So lahat tayo talaga gustong-gusto yung coconut sa gata. Kapag tayo nagluluto ng pakbet, yung iba ginagataan pa yan. So it's really, coconut really provides us with various uses, especially with our cuisine. Okay, thank you very much for participating in our Mentimeter. All right. Now, can I ask everyone here in the Zoom to please chat where you come from? So, meron nag-chat from Cabuyao, Laguna. Good morning po sa inyo. Meron pa po ba tayo from University of the Philippines, Los Baños? Yung mga kasamahan natin dito sa universidad. Magandang umaga po sa inyo lahat. All right. To formally open our program this morning, I would like to invite in the Zoom screen the Dean of the College of Agriculture and Food Science, no other than Dr. Elpidio M. Agbisit Jr. Good morning, Doc Bids.
Hi, good morning, John. Do you hear me properly?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Of course, to our speaker and director of the Institute of Crop Science, Dr. Consorcia Riaño, to Associate Dean for Research and Extension, Dr. Leah M. Fernando Corpus, to the men and women of the Ad hoc Committee for the Tree of Life webinar series, to all our partners and viewers, friends, ladies and gentlemen, a pleasant morning to all. On behalf of the College of Agriculture and Food Science, I wish to welcome you to the new series of Aggie Peace Talk, the second installment of Tree of Life, or Part 2. As the name suggests, Tree of Life refers to coconut. To give a refresher, the coconut is considered the tree of life because every part of it can be used to sustain the lives of human beings. We are pleased to offer you different topics for this season that will highlight more the coconut in the local context. I believe that after this season, you will learn a lot and appreciate coconut in its various uses in our everyday life. To our speaker, Dr. Riaño, thank you for your time to share your expertise with us. A lot of students, farmers, and interested individuals will benefit a lot from it. To all the guests, thank you for being with us this morning. You have always been supportive of our endeavors and to continue what we do because of you. If ever you miss or wanted to review an information, you may rewatch all our episodes and series via our CAPS Facebook or YouTube channel. May all of you interested in Philippine agriculture multiply, and we'll be more than happy to cater to all of you. Let us all be proud agriculturists. Thank you once again, and may all our dreams and aspirations come true. Hiraya Manawari to everyone. John?
Thank you very much, Dean Peets, for that inspirational message. And now to grab this opportunity while everyone is fresh, I'd like to invite our panelists and our host in the Zoom screen to please open up your cameras for a quick photo opportunity. All right. The photo op will be facilitated by Rachel. Okay. It's Rachel. Okay. While waiting for others.
Wait lang po. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3, smile. Okay po, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. You may now turn off your cameras. Now to give you some reminders, here are some house rules for us. just a quick snippet of what we shall follow for this morning. So for participants here in the Zoom, for the hosts and panelists, please keep your microphones muted at all times. So if you will, except of course, if you will be called or if you will request to speak. Now for our Zoom participants, during the question and answer portion, please utilize the chat box or raise your hand to be recognized. For the Facebook and YouTube viewers, you can use the comment section in your respective platforms so we can acknowledge your questions or your manifestations during the Q&A portion. And for the latter part of our webinar, we have an evaluation link for you to have your certificate of attendance. And now, let me introduce to you our speaker. So without further ado, let me read the bio note of our speaker. Our speaker this morning is an alumna of the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, holding a Bachelor of Science degree in Agriculture, major in sugar breeding, and Master of Science in Agronomy, major in plant breeding. She then pursued her Doctor of Philosophy degree in Statistics with a cognate and plant breeding in the same institution and the Iowa State University. She started her career as a research assistant from the Institute of Plant Breeding from 1979 to 1984, focusing on the cytogenetics of tobacco and breeding. She was also involved in numerous research and extension projects funded by local and international funding agencies, which solidified her name in the academia, especially in the field of crop breeding. Currently, our speaker is a professor and the director of the Institute of Crop Science, CAFS UPLB. Folks, to share their research and knowledge on phenology studies, crop management, and model development for coconut, let us all give a warm round of applause to the director of the Institute of Crop Science, no other than Dr. Consorcia E. Reaño. Ma'am Connie, good morning. Ma'am, your microphone is on.
Okay, good morning to all. So a pleasant morning to everyone in YouTube, in Facebook, and the Zoom. Okay, so shall I start?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so may I share? Moment lang eh. Okay, good morning to all. So the topic for this morning in the Tree of Life webinar is phenology studies for crop management and model development. So please tell me if I am not that, or can you hear me clearly?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you clearly.
Okay. Okay, so the output of or what we will be discussing this morning is actually output from our project in Sarai. We call it Project 1.2 for Sarai Phase 2. And it is entitled Phenology Studies, Crop Management and Model Development in Sugarcane and Coconut. So this time for this webinar, we are focusing on coconut. So I would also like to just this or that the things that we will be looking at for this part, because I believe that we need more time if we are to look at the models and the validation. So since I was told that this should be like 30 minutes or so, I chose to discuss the activities that we have gone through in order to come up with the models, the crop models based on phenology studies. Okay. Okay, so here, first of all, I'd like to acknowledge my co-project workers, or my project co-workers rather, Mr. Speedy Crisostomo from the Institute of Plant Breeding, Mr. Christopher De La Cruz from the OVICRE, now with OVICRE, and then Mr. Junel Metrillo, okay, who is now with, I think, the OST. Okay, so back in 1853, the term phenology was actually introduced by a Belgian botanist, and it is derived from the word phino, Phaino, to mean to come forth or to appear. Okay, so now phenology is known as the science that measures the timing. Okay, the timing of life cycle events for plants, animals, and microbes, and detects how the environment influences the timing of those events. So it is also a study of the timing of recurring biological events, the interaction of biotic and abiotic forces that affect these events. Okay, and also we will look at the interrelation among phases of the same or different species, or units or individuals coming from the same or different species. So this is the definition given by Leith in 1974. Okay, so why conduct or why study phenology, specifically here for coconut? So for one, our main objective for this study is actually understand the physiological mechanism for coconut, specifically its economic attributes like yield, nut yield, fruit components, or fruit and nut components rather. So we study phenology to understand a biological phenomenon. So particularly here, how does the coconut come up with those nuts, those yields, the yield or the economic part that we are, at least the major part, okay? Because as heard earlier, it's a tree of life, and a lot of products are being derived from coconut. So we try to understand the biological phenomenon, and then also, it is very useful for modeling. Now, when we model, there are two objectives. Okay, so the first one actually is to understand the biological phenomenon, but this time we would want it in quantitative terms. So as much as possible, we would want to measure. We come up with a parameter with which we are able to say that this is how one factor affects, say, nut yield, particularly for coconut, or copra yield for coconut. So when you say these factors, we mean, for the most part, the environmental factors, like, for example, rainfall, minimum temperature, maximum temperature, so all of those variables. So we want to quantify while we understand the biological phenomenon. Now, the other thing, of course, is for prediction. Okay. Now, in addition to quantifying, that's actually gives you an understanding which factors are more important than the others, which is the most important, which comes second, and so on. Because this will actually for making advisories, regarding coconut production. This will be very helpful. Now, the other one is modeling for prediction and forecasting. So prediction of yield particularly and forecasting yield given, say, a scenario. Say, for example, for next year, given that we have a scenario, what will be the projected yield of coconut? So, of course, industries will be very interested in such information. Now, also, of course, crop management. So, how does the coconut behave or respond to particular fluctuations of factors necessary for its growth? Okay, so there are actually, when we say models, there are two types of models. We call it the phenological models, which essentially will be focus more on the cause and effect. No? So we want to explain in terms of physiology. When you say that, minimum temperature or maximum temperature is important, how does it affect? So that is a phenological model. Now, the other one, of course, is your statistical model. Now, in the statistical model, that is where we quantify. But for this project, we want to marry those two. So, in this, at the same time that we're generating like quantitative parameters to measure the effect of, say, environmental factors, we also would want to explain, or there should be some underlying explanation or physiological explanation for the effect of those factors. Okay? So that is why we study phenology. Now, why coconut? Okay, so I think having a webinar dedicated to it actually underscores the importance of coconut. So in terms of statistics, okay, so it is planted in 69 out of 82 provinces. So we were largely, our land, agricultural land, is actually planted to coconut. 3.6 million hectares of land are planted with coconut trees. So imagine if you do not have coconut in those 3.6 million hectares. Now, also, it is a social crop with 2.5 million coconut farmers or coconut-based farmers. Okay? So this is based on the registry, coconut registry data. So it actually is, it affects a large proportion of our population. Now, latest statistics shows that there are 347 million fruit-bearing trees in the country. Okay? So in terms of its economic importance, you have palay as, of course, the main. And then it comes after corn and banana, actually. Okay, so the importance of coconut, so it accounts for 9% of the gross value added for agriculture. Okay, now the average yield of coconut trees remains at 45 nuts per tree per year. It used to be 44. Okay, but now they say it's 45. Last meeting, they say it's like 42. Okay, so that is, it remains to be a major economically important crop for the Philippines. Okay, that is why we have we are studying coconut. Okay, so coconut phenology. There are not, so in general, phenology studies for coconut are rare. Okay, so this is one of them, Phenology of Coconut Palms on the Coastal Zone of Pernambuco, Brazil, published in June 2002. There are other phenology studies, but relatively, compared to other crops, phenology studies for coconut are rare. Now, if there are, it is like at stages. No? I think that is understandable. Okay. So why? Because the reproductive development. So because we are the main economic part of coconut, or the economically important product of coconut is the coconut themselves, the nuts. Okay. So that means it is we get the nuts after it has undergone its reproductive development. Okay, so reproductive development in palms, or particular in coconut, is a long process. I think everybody knows that, with a series of discrete stages or events. So coconut reaches from seedling. Okay, from seedling, if you plant a coconut seed nut, okay, at least maybe the fastest would be like 4 years for you to come up with flowers. And usually the first flowering bunches would not bear really yung coconuts. So flowers may be the successive bunches. That is where you get some nuts. But that is not true for all varieties. Okay, so it's a long process. So maybe after like 7 years, then it flowers, and then it flowers continuously. Okay, so it flowers continuously, such that depending on the crop, like when you say crop, you have your young coconut or your buko, which is made into buko pie. You have your matured nuts. Okay, you have, of course, your water. Okay, now the matured nuts will take you usually, depending on the site. Like for example, in Calabarzon, most farmers will harvest after every 45 days. Okay, so every 45 days, a farmer gets to harvest matured nuts. For the young coconut, it's every 30 days. Okay, so Batangas, like Malbar, Lipa will actually focus more on the young coconut, while Quezon, Laguna also will focus on the matured nuts. Okay, so it depends on the product. Now, for some other locations, they will harvest because this is labor. So in some sites like Palawan, they will harvest at 60 every 60 days. Okay, so every 60 days, so you can imagine some nuts are up the tree, some nuts are actually on the ground. Okay, but that is the custom, or that is the practice that farmers there are used to. So sometimes 90 days. Okay, so it really depends. Now, in some locations, they also depend on what we call the mangangawit. Especially in the rural areas, we have what we call this not mangangawit, magkakawit. Okay, these magkakawit are actually the harvesters. So within a barangay, there is at least a coconut growing barangay. There is at least one harvester, and he gets to schedule when a farm will be harvested. So even if it's like 45 days, that will be plus or minus some days. Okay, now studies of the events leading to the production of your coconut are often hampered by morphological characteristics that are generally common to palms. One, they are notably large size. So yung adult palm, okay, like average maybe 16 or 20 meters, okay, 16 to 20 meters. for the tall ones. Now, the dwarf also gets to be tall also if it is old. Okay, so the dwarf actually is slow growing, but it also grows to a considerable height. Okay, so with the large size, so and if we are imagine observing the nuts. So here we're looking at the phenology. So basically we're looking at the development of the nuts up there in the canopy. So you can just imagine how difficult it is to get data, okay? Because we want to get data on the behavior, okay? How the nuts respond to particular forces in the environment. Okay, so as I said, this is part of Sarai. Now, Sarai is actually a 3-year project. So, but we are looking at the phenology. So what we did was to study phenology for the seedlings, and we have a different setup for studying the phenology for the fruit-bearing trees. So for the seedling, we actually look at dwarf varieties. We have dwarf varieties flown in at PB experimental station. So this is actually Malayan red dwarf. We have Katigan, we have Takunan also. And then for the tall, we also, I think 6 varieties also were flown in, Baybay, Tagnanan, Laguna, Bagao Shiro. So these are actually recommended varieties of PCA. So we're studying the phenology for the seedlings. So from germination up to at the time that they are ready to be transferred to the plantations. So that means germination, and then you have to put them in seed bed. After the seed bed, you have to put them in poly bags before they are transferred to the actual plantation. Now, note here that you have 72 days after sowing, you have only this size, okay, emerging from your nut. 76 and then 98 days after sowing. So here you have the different stages as described. So elongation of the young shoot, emergence of the first true fused leaves. Okay, so that happens for the Malayan red dwarf at 76 days after sowing. Now for unfolding of the first leaf that happens after 98 days. And then unfolding of the 3 true leaves, 133 days. And unfolding of 4 true leaves, 186 days after sowing. Now, this was set up at the Institute of Plant Breeding. So that means it is under Laguna conditions. Now, for the Baybay tall, almost the same number of days after sowing. So the plumule now emerges. And then you have 85 days after sowing, so elongation. Now, 90 days, emergence of first true fused leaves, which is for your Malayan red dwarf, that would be 76. Now, for separation of first leaf, that will be 99 days after sowing for almost the same as your Malayan red dwarf. Unfolding of first leaf, 106 days after sowing. And then unfolding of 3 true leaves, 117 days. Okay, which is 133 days for the dwarf. They actually vary considerably. Okay, so they vary considerably, and also as observed, we also had problems with germination. Okay. So these are actually the operations. So they are put in seed beds, and then here they are ready now for, these are the polybag, so they are now ready for transplanting onto the coconut plantation. So we use the 8x8 distance or spacing between trees or between palms. Okay, so in comparison, here we have Baybay tall, Laguna tall, Tagnanan tall. So these are the tall varieties. So by the way, the tall varieties are actually open pollinated, or generally there are actually 4 flowering patterns of coconut for the tall varieties or even the dwarf. Okay, so there are 4 flowering patterns. So that determines whether the population is selfing or outcrossing or often cross. So that depends on the overlap of the receptivity of the male and the female flower. So there are varieties that are really cross. That means they do not overlap. Okay, even the sister bunches or the sister flowers. So when you say bunch 1, bunch 2, so sometimes they get to flower, but there are accessions or there are populations wherein there is really no overlap. So that particular accession will be strictly cross. On the other hand, there are some accessions or some populations wherein there is a bit overlap, like yung sister, no? So like the younger bunches sometimes overlap the receptivity overlaps with the receptivity of the male overlaps with the receptivity of the old female. Okay, so here you have Katigan, Malayan, and Takunan also. So these are the comparison of yung growth. So what we want to emphasize here is really the variability. So we want to examine what actually or why do they vary. Okay, of course we know that there is genetic there is some genetic or genetic cause underlying, or really the variability, part of it is genetic, while part is environmental. So for all of this, you have comparisons. Now, even the dwarf, you see that Katigan dwarf takes really a long time for all, okay, compared to the other two. Okay. Now, in terms yung unfolding, while earlier you have yung unfold, while up to the time na unfolding, you have the dwarf taking less time. But yung last stage, the tall will also, or that up to the last stage, the dwarf now takes more time. Okay, so we have here yung unfolding, yung last stage, unfolding 4 to, we have 227, 186, 186, compared to your tall varieties. Okay, so that means, I know that is physiological. Okay, so this is what we want to study, okay, at least for the seedlings. Now, by the time that these seedlings, the project will end without us seeing any flowers. Okay, so that's why we had a different setup for your fruit bearing. Okay, now we came across this particular phenological diagram. Okay, phenological, sorry. Okay. We came across this diagram. This is due to Kumar in 2011. So here, it gives you the different stages towards the development of a nut. So our last stage should be the harvest of the nut. Okay, harvesting of the nut. So that means the mature nut. Now, these are months actually. Okay, so that a nut actually, yung primordium, okay, primordium initiation, okay, for you to get a nut, okay, happens 44 months before you harvest. Okay, so primordium initiation happens 44 months before you harvest. Okay, so that means, like for example, yung number of female, sorry, these are the female flowers of the coconut. This, we call them buttons. Okay, so these are the female flowers and these are the male. Okay, so these ones are the male flowers shedding pollen. Okay, so they do not overlap in terms of receptivity. So by the time that the pollen here shed, that you observe pollen shedding, the females are not yet receptive, or the stigma are not yet receptive. So here, when we say that, I do not know what is happening, it keeps on forwarding, but yung primordium, yung primordium initiation, if in case, okay, the number of female flowers is determined during that time, okay, so that means any like cultural practices after that is determined will not actually increase the number of female flowers. Okay? If that is so, if the number of female flowers is determined 44 months before. Okay, so here you have, so that is primordium initiation, inflorescence initiation. Now, several months after, okay, so that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, after 9, then you have inflorescence branch development. So this is the inflorescence of your coconut. So inflorescence branch development, and then several months after, you have male and female flower development. Okay, so as I said, these are the flowers. You have the female flowers and you have the male flowers here. Okay, so that is 24 months before harvest. So there is now 19 months before harvest. There is ovary differentiation because our interest is the fruit. So ovary differentiation, and then spathe emergence. Okay, so this is actually enclosed. So if that is a spathe, so this is actually enclosed. So spathe emergence. Then 15 months, then you get to see the inflorescence opening. Okay, so inflorescence opening. So 12 months before. So now that is where your pollination, fertilization comes in. So after pollination, you wait for 12 months, then you have a mature nut. So if you fertilize if the fruit is fertilized in January, by December, you have the mature nut. Okay. Now with phenology, especially with other crops, the idea will be like every day you observe. Every day you observe the plant, okay? Especially for the plants with short duration, okay, growing period, no. But for coconut here, even for just a single nut, it will take you more than a year. Okay, 44 months before will actually be at a period when the project doesn't even start, hasn't even started yet. Okay, So we came across this. So we are interested on what factors will be affecting this. So you get to, of course, the factors that we will be looking at are the environmental factors. So generally those that are coming from Pag-asa. So that means you have to get data 44 months before. Okay. Get data on rainfall, temperature, and so on 44 months before. Okay. To see how those variables really affect these stages, because all of these stages will be affected by those variables. Like for example, temperatures, maximum temperature. There are actually results. Okay? We have had results that sometimes the growing degree days is negatively correlated with nut yield or monthly nut yield. Okay, maybe there is a path, an intermediate path for that, no? But for direct correlation, we are getting negative correlation. Okay, for growing degree days. So that is yung temperature. Hindi ko alam. Okay, so here we want that what happens. So what will be like maximum, minimum temperature for that particular phenophase, like primordial initiation, inflorescence branch development. Like for example, for fertilization, okay, we if there are days wherein you do not have that much solar radiation and it's raining, so fertilization or pollination is actually reduced. No? Yung rate of pollination is actually reduced. So that will tell on the number of nuts from your coconut tree. Okay, so you can imagine here, so this is just 1 point. Okay, so when I say 1 point, since we're looking at a model, we are to devise a model for you who have gone to like content statistics lang, like regression model. Okay, so when you do regression, you have several points, right? You have several points. But note here that like for example, if you get weather variables during primordial initiation, that is a pair of, or that is a vector. You have primordial initiation, okay, yung days, okay, yung days, because you need to get that. Your main dependent variable, say for example, be number of nuts or nut weight. Okay, so for nut weight, you have several independent variables, because if we track this, then you have to get the weather variables at the time 44 months before for you to see whether they will have an effect. But you will not know that unless you analyze. Okay, so all of this, male flower development, ovary differentiation, inflorescence opening, and so on. Okay, now we have reason to say that they are actually affected, okay, because we have some results that that tells us so. Now, as I said, if we have one population, by the way, we are conducting these phenology studies in Zamboanga because we are sure that we have, okay, because we are sure that we are sure of the identity of the nuts, we are sure of the population, that we are dealing with a genetically identical population. For, as I said, we are looking at six populations, 6 tall populations and 6 dwarf. So we want to make sure that we are looking at really genetically they are that variety. Okay, so especially for the dwarf and also for the tall. So even if the tall are heterogeneous because they are open pollinated. So that means you have to go to Zamboanga each time climb trees, okay? And for a particular accession, so an accession, our practice is to look or gather data from 30. So for the tall coconuts, which are heterogeneous, we're sampling 30 palms, okay? So the for number of male, female flowers, number of bunches, and so on. Okay. So now those 30 observations will give us a single point or a single vector. In that vector, you have the dependent variable, which is the nut yield. Okay. And then you have the independent variables, which consist of the weather variables for each of these stages. Okay. So for a single sampling, so that is 1 point. Okay, because the weather will also be the same. Yung climate variables will be the same. They're all in Zamboanga, and at any one time, then you have a vector of climatic variables. Okay. So for a population, we sample, we go to them 4 times a year. Okay, 4 times a year to observe all of those variables. So the weather variables are coming from Pag-asa, but these phenological characteristics are coming really from observed data. Okay. Now that is 1 point, Zamboanga only. Now, in order for us to assess whether there are differences also due to the climatic variables, we have to have several samples coming from sites that will have a different profile in terms of those environmental variables. So what we did here was to observe 28 populations. These are all tall populations. So 28 tall populations of coconut, all open pollinated. From Bolinao to Samal, Davao del Norte. So for each one, you have 30 trees. For each sampling, you have 1 point, including the 1 point corresponding to a vector, because we are to generate several points. Okay, so you can just imagine the data collection, the logistics that come in for phenological studies like this. The 28 are actually, we took 7 locations from each of the corona climate types. So type 1, type 2, type 3, type 4, 7 from each. Now, to identify this, the exclusion or a requirement will be that the population or the plantation, that the plantation is actually about or no more than 20 kilometers from a weather station. Okay? So because we observe the weather, okay, at the same time, the phenological traits of the accession. So as I said, that will give us 1 point. Okay. So if we do 4 samplings for each of these, then we have 4 points, okay, for each accession. Okay, and you can just imagine 4 points. We have many independent variables. So 4 points clearly is not enough per accession. Okay, so these are the locations of the different plantations that were observed. Sorry. Okay, so this is what I was telling you. We have came across a monthly data. Okay, so diligently taken monthly data on the number of buttons. So this is just one accession. So note that we have here the number of buttons. Actually, for June, July, August, May, June, July, August. are clearly more than like January, February, December. So clearly there is some mechanism working for in terms of number of nuts, no? Number of nuts. So because these are bottoms. Now, we are not sure, but I am inferring, no? Like for the project wherein we applied fertilizer. Okay, we applied fertilizer so that we get also to vary the fertility. However, since we are looking at number of nuts, I'm not sure whether the number of nuts that we are observing at the end of the project is actually a result of the fertilizer that we have applied. We think that it will take more. Okay? That's why the hypothesis that yung primordium initiation, if that determines the number of nuts, then clearly yung fertilizer applied during the project duration will not have an effect. But I do not know, or we're still looking at yung meat weight, okay, like meat size, the nut weight. I think that will have, or the fertilizer will have an effect on that, but not on the number of nuts. We actually focus on the number of nuts because that is easier to assess. Okay, because for the other fruit and nut characteristics, you have to have a sample, go to the process, follow the protocol of PCA on how all of these variables are taken. Okay, so clearly, yung logistics of coming up with yung data. Okay, so actually here, there is a correlation on the number of bottoms with various climate weather variables. So particularly mean temperature. So in mean temperature, we actually, Pag-asa gives you the maximum and the minimum. So the average, that is what we call, for a day, that is what we call the mean temperature. So, and then the actual sunshine hours, the possible sunshine, and then solar radiation. So these are just Pearson correlation coefficients. So that means you have positive correlation, although except for possible sunshine, yung 0.55 is a little weak. No? I'm not sure also what we are looking at maximum minimum. I think maximum will have more effect rather than the mean. So yung possible solar radiation, possible sunshine hours, clearly is strongly correlated with the number of bottoms. I think that also will have an effect on yung GDD. So because yung solar radiation as well as yung temperature. Because usually if you have a lot of sunshine, yung temperature is also high. Now that is number of bottoms. No? Now there is another variable which is what we call nightfall. Now yung number of bottoms, that is let's say genetically determined. But yung nightfall, although also that can be genetically, or I think there is also genetic control for nightfall, a lot of it, a lot of the effect will come from yung environmental. Okay? So like for example, yung rainfall, drought, okay? Clearly they will have an effect, okay, on the final number of nuts that you harvest. Okay, so you have number of bottoms. Okay, these are actually the fist size, so we call them tennis ball size. And then they will experience nightfall. Say you have 26 of them, 28 of them, and then you get to harvest for a bunch like 10 is already good. Okay, so that means there are still a lot of factors coming in, from the number of buttons down to your final nut. Okay, so this is coming from although yung scale lang. So we actually had, okay, so these are the sampling dates. Now for this particular setup, this is actually during the pandemic. We refrained from climbing the pumps. What we did was just to ask the owner or monitor the number of nuts being harvested. Okay. So for all of these sampling dates, we look at the number of nuts being harvested. So potential yield, because of course the female flower, our staff climb those trees to get those data. But for the potential yield, we actually sampled from 20 trees. Okay? So yung number of nuts harvested from 20 trees and then projected for 1 hectare basis. So A is potential yield in terms of number of nuts, and then B, the number of tennis ball size nuts. Okay. And then the female flower, and then the nuts per bunch. Okay. So yung tennis ball size, yan around 8. Okay. So yung nuts per bunch. So these are how the nuts or the coconut palms behave. So this is from January 2019 to February 2021. So note na every 6 months or the most ay quarterly. Okay? Because this is located in Sariaya, Quezon, and because of the community quarantine measures, there are instances wherein we cannot go to or our climbers cannot go to the sites. Okay. So like in here, you have February 20 and then February 21. So there should be a intermediate sampling date. However, because of that, this is how we observe. Okay. So we actually had plans of another demo farm we have started that out in Palawan. However, we cannot go to Palawan each time. Okay, so for meat thickness, okay, so we sampled some, okay, just to give us an idea of how thick. Yung meat thickness is actually the white part, okay? The white part of your coconut. Yung especially kung matured, it can be like 1 centimeter thick. Okay? So here, there are actually 3 treatments. No? So control, irrigation plus fertilizer. Now, if you look at the treatments, parang obvious. No? Of course, we will get more yield under the treatment wherein you have irrigation and fertilizer. The irrigation rate used here was the PCA recommended rate, because that was the result of an earlier study. Now, here, your irrigation plus fertilizer, clearly, yung first sampling pa lang, is more superior than the 2. But however, our aim here is to show yung cost, okay? Yung ROI actually. No? So we want to demonstrate to the farmers that if you take care of your plantations, do some cultural practices, specifically fertilize, irrigate. Normally, you do not irrigate. Okay, I still have to see a plantation that irrigates coconut. So, but this is just to demonstrate. And then we will actually look at the ROI. So here, we also look at the water quality of yung endosperm, yung liquid endosperm of the coconut. So this is your water quality. So here for the fertilize, yung phenols, you have 6.61 yung phenols. Total soluble solids, yung bricks ay 5.22. And then for pH, almost no difference. It's a little bit acidic, but comparable to the other two treatments. Okay, so as I said earlier, the modeling part takes a lot of time. So what I'm giving you now are samples, okay? So samples of models. These are both statistical and of course, the physiologies we want to explain. Okay, why? Why minimum temperature? Why maximum temperature? In the same manner as yung altitude, no, or yung elevation. Usually your coconut grows below 600 meters above sea level. Okay, so there is a physiological reason for that. And we want to do the same for this, yung empirical model. So percent button shedding, so this is our variable. Now, among all of the environmental variables, so this is actually coming from another phenological study, which was done in Sri Lanka. You have minimum temperature and maximum temperature across all of the variables. Okay, that was tested. Now, remember our yung ating phenological, yung 44 months before. They have taken all of those data. However, only two turned out to be significant. So 1.681 between maximum and minimum, maximum temperature is more important in terms of the magnitude of the effect on percent button shedding. Okay? Yung button shedding, ito yung nalalaglag, yung napsol. And then of course your intercept. Now, not yield per month. Now, we want this actually. However, yung ating the observation unit natin, yung sampling natin actually is the most frequent is quarterly. Okay? But the ideal is monthly. Okay, so that means instead of getting 12 observations in a year, we only have 4. Okay, so that's why we had to do all of those plantations. Now, so this is actually what they got. So not yield per month. You have mean vapor pressure deficit, so which was not taken here, at least in our setup. Because you need special equipment for this. 0.009 evaporation during ovary development. Minimum temperature during branch development of inflorescence. Recall that these are the stages I showed you earlier before harvest. And then you have minimum temperature during spadix emergence. You have wind speed during spadix emergence. You have maximum temperature during button size nut stage. And you have evaporation during button size nut stage. Now this model actually accounts for 78% of the variation in the nut yield per month. Okay, so this is for a single accession. So this is actually obtained by Kumar in 2011. So we are building a model similar to this, except, of course, there are some variables that we were not able to take. Now, the weather variables, we actually will be using the phenological yung diagram earlier, even if that is not taken in the Philippines. Okay? So that is set up at the Coconut Research Institute in Sri Lanka. So, but we will be looking at that. That will be our basis, yung 44 months. So we will get weather variables from each of those stages on the assumption that yung ating phenological stages follows the same. Okay? So, these models, of course, as we said, is for understanding of how yung physiological mechanism, so that we can make interventions. Okay? So especially there are seasons. Okay, there are seasons. So there are months wherein you have earlier we showed that there are months wherein you have a high number of buttons. Okay, there are months wherein you have less number of buttons. That is actually related to yung rain. Okay, rain or availability of water, soil moisture, and of course your temperature. Okay, solar radiation also. So if a farmer, okay, will have the capacity to like apply interventions, then that information is available. But usually such information is for to forecast yung supply of coconut for this. So that will aid like industry stakeholders. So that is the idea. So yung prediction not only for the farmer but also for the big stakeholders, wherein they're not necessarily farmer but they crucial yung supply. Crucial, the supply of coconuts for their businesses is crucial. So we plan to have yung models is a separate forum sana. Okay? So I think this is by far yung model na this. So basically what I have given you are the activities towards the development of the phenological statistical model for coconut. Okay? So thank you very much for listening, and I'm happy to answer queries as much as I can. I will try. Okay.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Connie, for that very insightful and, of course, refreshing discussion on phenological studies on coconut. I'm equally astounded with the information that you've shared, especially we have established that coconut is one of the major economically important crops in the Philippines. Kanina po kinumpute ko po, sinabi yung 42 to 45 knots per tree. So that's around, kinumpute ko, 14 billion to 15 billion coconuts per year yung production natin, which is kind of high para po sa atin. Now, I'm now opening the floor for questions and manifestations for our participants in Zoom. You may use the Q&A box or the chat box to key in your questions. And for our participants in Facebook and YouTube, you may comment your questions. All right, so I guess while waiting for some questions. Ma'am Connie, can I ask the first question po sa inyo? All right, so ma'am, we have established earlier that there are lots of variables and factors that affect the development of buttons and nuts in the coconut, and one of them is climate. Ma'am, are there established special management practices wherein makokontrol po yung effects ng climate, ng variables ng climate sa button shedding?
In terms of climate, like temperature.
Sure.
I do not know how to control them for a plantation, and I can imagine also yung farmer, no? Because yung coconut gives shield whole year round. Okay, so there are phases wherein it experiences low temperature, but there are also phases that it experience yung optimum temperature. So it's part of the cycle. So that's why, as I said earlier, yung models can also act as parang advisory in terms of the supply, okay, for industries. Now, if there are farmers that are, because I can't imagine a plantation like in a controlled environment, a coconut plantation in a controlled environment. So because 1 hectare will just give you 123 trees. You know? And yung 45 trees per year, per tree, is actually low. Okay? That is low. Brazil is getting more than, they say, more than 200, more than 300 per tree.
Per tree, wow. Okay.
But that is because I think we do not fertilize, we do not irrigate, we do not take care of our coconut plantation.
I see, ma'am. So aside from climate, really the current management practices of our farmers
Yes.
really affect the yield of coconut. Going to that direction, ma'am, on the management of our farmers. Recently, the Philippine Coconut Authority launched the Philippine roadmap for coconut. And where do you see your studies or your project? Saan po kaya siya papasok when it comes to going through this route to the modernization of our coconut industry? What are the applications of your project or
Yung
your
models.
studies?
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Particularly with that.
So basically, yung models, as I said, if it's for prediction, yan, prediction ng supply, maybe for crop improvement. So especially if you are assessing, you do not want, like yung prime number of years daw ng coconut is around 35. So that is yung tall, no? Yung tall coconut. So that is yung time that it expresses yung kanyang full potential, 35 years. So if you're doing coconut breeding, you do not want to wait for 35 years, no? Just to see how the nuts will fare in terms of yung kanilang yield performance. So maybe with these models, especially if the models are like taken yung early part, so to project, okay, and of course that will also take time, no, for those models. So if you can have a model, yung extreme, no, if you have a seedling model that can predict yung kanyang adult performance, then we do not have to plant the adult. Okay? From the seedling, we can select, at least for breeding. So medyo dun ako sa breeding kasi yun yung medyo na intindihan ko.
Yeah.
But yung seedling, at least there are characteristics of seedlings na correlated. Okay, like for example, yung pag yung mabilis mag-germinate, okay, so good performance daw yun. But whether quantified yun, I have yet to see.
All right, thank you very much, ma'am, for that. I guess hindi lang itong phenological studies really and crop modeling, of course, is just an aspect really on how can we revitalize our coconut industry, especially right now we're applying smart approaches on how can we make our industry more productive and of course resilient with the changing times. Of course, climate change is really a huge threat for our coconut farmers. We have experienced that through the storms and weather disturbances that we have experienced throughout the years. Okay, there is one question from R.A. Pascual, Ma'am Connie. Let me read it. Kung ako po ba ay first-timer maging isang coconut farmer, ako po ba ay mahihirapan o kailangan ko po ba na dumaan sa pagsasanay? Ano po ang inyong maipapayo? So basically, ma'am, the question goes, if I am a beginner farmer, do I need to undergo training and seminars to have a successful endeavor?
Actually, if not necessarily naman ng training, no, but since PCA is also providing assistance, so better to avail. So especially now that they're actually promoting yung coconut hybridization program, where we want to replant hybrids. So they're actually yung extension to the farmers. So yung farm mo will be assessed by them, whether pwede siyang seed farm. I think yung coconut farmers, if they just avail of the services being given, or yung assistance being given by PCA, I think okay naman, because some farmers that we have actually mga collaborators namin who are in close contact with, like we call them the coconut development officers. They are actually, we call them also the progressive ones. So they are doing good with their farms, but it doesn't really necessarily require yung high level of expertise to help to plant coconuts.
All right. I guess talaga it's important to reach out to the Philippine Coconut Authority or sa inyong mga municipal, provincial agriculture offices for you to have support for your endeavor. And of course, marami naman din pong mga organisasyon na organized, farmers organizations and cooperatives dealing with coconuts. Sila po yung mga batikan na. Matagal na sila dito sa industriya. At I believe na makakatulong sa inyo if you will start venturing on coconut as a business. All right.
And also, if I may add, part of the roadmap, I think, is to because one of the problems ng coconut is yung middleman. Okay? So I think there is a program in the new roadmap that actually promotes yung parang village type of you see yung copra, they bring that to the factory. So there is a move to bring the copra mill, so yung mga small scale copra mill, to the villages, so that the farmer can bring their nuts directly to that, no middleman. So that means that will translate to increasing income for them.
That's great, ma'am. Actually, parang small-scale processing centers in the communities or cooperatives. That's a great idea, actually, ma'am. Speaking of copra, ma'am, we have a question here in Zoom from Mr. Johnny Dulnuan. Dwarf coconut is a good for export? And in terms of copra production, which of the two have more or higher production? So, ma'am, dwarf or tall? Parang for copra.
There is a dwarf like takunan and katigan also comparable with the tall, but yung hybrids, no, PCA is recommending 8 dwarf by tall hybrids, and in terms of copra, they are hybrids, comparable to the tall ones.
Alright, ma'am, makakakuha po ba kami information nan sa PCA website ng mga binanggit niyo pong varieties?
Saan ba? I didn't see that list in the website, but I don't know. It's available somewhere. I have it in PowerPoints, no. They're recommending 6 hybrids, dwarf by tall hybrids, and then the 6 tall.
All right, 6. All right. I guess we can just search on the
Eight
web,
rather. Eight.
or later when we will have the contact information of Doc Connie and her team, maybe we can ask them further. I have one question on Facebook, ma'am. Ma'am, is it okay to apply different techniques on care and maintenance sa coconut based sa mga nakikita online? Or is it safe to base your management on coconut based sa mga techniques online na nakikita, ma'am? I believe with the advent of different online sources, ma'am, I don't know if they are validated, yung mga management practices, especially sa Facebook, may mga video yon, ma'am, from abroad na nakita sila. Are these practices applicable here in the Philippines?
When I search the YouTube, yung mga nandun, naka-irrigate yung coconut nila, like sa Malaysia and so on, which we do not do here. Okay, so, but coconut is also a plant. It needs water. So, if you do irrigate, the better it will perform. Okay, but of course you have to yung balance yung cost, no?
All right. Thank you very much for that, ma'am. So that question from Facebook is from Mary Chris A. Taga-Tagon. Ayun po. All right. We have a message here in Zoom, ma'am, from Vicente Naque. I share my experience since 70s. He started 70s farming coconut. Ngunit hanggang ngayon, undeveloped into business. Napag-iwanan kami ng panahon mula pa bata. Nyog na yung namulatan niya. Hanggang yun, hindi pa napaltan ng mababa dahil kulang ang supply. Allocated daw sa Surigao del Sur, ma'am. 14 hectares. Ang laki ng plantation.
Okay, so depends, no? If those nuts trees are really old, like senile, then they have to be replaced. Okay, because especially yung ano natin, yung tall, when yung dulo nagpe-pencil, they call it nagpe-pencil na. That means nagte-taper off na.
Yep.
Na yun. Okay? So usually yung industry talaga nagsasuffer dun sa nagsasuffer sa marami tayong senile trees. So when say senile, talagang yung productivity nila pa-decline na. So better na yun, kailangan na natin mag-replant. Some farmers will not opt, especially kung namulatan na nila yung tall, some farmers will go also for tall. So that's why yung PCA naman, meron silang tall varieties because some farmers wouldn't want dwarf by tall height. Yeah. So the farmers have choices.
Yes,
so, yung soil din siguro, no? Baka yung soil, Surigao, I'm not really sure, but when I went to Surigao, yung soil niya yung parang may coral.
Iba yung type na soil.
So,
yeah.
I think yung better consult kung problema sa soil, no? Better consult yung agriculturist. Pero kung talagang matanda na yung ating plantation, I think it would be better na
to replace.
Especially now na may drive talaga to enhance talaga yung planting ng coconut. And I think they will have incentives for those farmers na interested. Okay. Naka-charge yun sa levy, alam ko. So,
I see, ma'am. Yeah, that's really true, ma'am. I believe, Sir Vicente, I guess it's much better to consult with our agriculturist, the Philippine Coconut Authority, para meron po tayong recommendations based sa inyong site. I guess hindi naman pare-pareho yung site sa ibang probinsya. May different climatic factors. Yung sa soil, isa pa rin po yung dapat pag-aralan at marami pa pong kailangan tayong tingnan para maging successful yung venture aside from the environmental, dun sa planting materials din, baka kailangan na din natin paltan yung mga matatanda natin na mga coconut. Another question, Sige po, basahin ko lang itong manifestation ni Sir Vicente. Maganda daw ang soil doon. Kahit anong variety pwede.
Ilang taon na kaya yung kanyang nyug? Sir,
Siguro po.
na po yung nyug nyo.
Alright. Siguro ma'am, while waiting for Sir Vicente's response to that, one more question from Sir J. Mark Dagdag. Ma'am, maganda daw po bang itanim ang buko or coconut dito sa Ilocos Sur?
Yung ano naman, yung sa Ilocos Sur. Nagbe-base lang ako sa nagbe-base ako sa population of coconut na yung provinces. But usually yung nakikita ko Cagayan yung upper. But yung buko naman tsaka yung basta may market ka kasi kung ayaw mong harvesting yung buko, go to 45 days, then meron kang matured nuts. So kung gusto mong buko, every 30 days. So same tree naman yun. So same may buko.
Okay. Sorry, ma'am. I guess the connection here in the university is kind of intermittent, but I believe I hope we have clarified, Sir J. Mark. Ang matured coconut 45, pwede yung buko 30 days, dun yung harvesting natin. So, depends really on the market. Kung may demand ba talaga po sa inyo, ay pwede talaga kayong magtanim or magpalaki ng buko or ng coconut.
In terms of in terms of harvesting, like yung buko, hindi siya pinapabagsak, hindi siya sinusungkit. The matured nuts usually sinusungkit yon, but the buko, you have to climb and then bring them down. Kasi pag binagsak mo yun, mababasag yun.
Yeah. All right. That topic is more on really talaga sa harvesting and post-harvest. Another topic that we can touch probably in the coming webinar series for the Tree of Life. Ma'am, 54 years old na daw po ang coconut sila, sir. 54 years old. Ayun, so baka medyo matanda na nga siguro, ma'am. Kahit maganda yung soil, baka nga talaga nagpe-pencil na yung kanilang coconut.
Ganun na po kataas.
Ay pa isang factor siguro. Siguro Sir Vicente, you can connect with Ma'am Connie's team after webinar, so we can have more discussions, detailed discussions to it. Ma'am Connie, last question. What is your message to our viewers, especially sa ating mga enthusiasts, sa ating mga researchers na gustong tumahak dito sa direksyon nyo, especially on phenological studies, given that this is a rare, a niche area when it comes to coconut?
Okay. Not necessarily on modeling, but yung sa planting ng coconut, for so many years na involved ako sa coconut, I get to meet farmers talaga. So talagang farmers. And my yung conclusion ko is very rare yung farmer na inaalagaan niya yung coconut niya. Like yung kahit yung simpleng weeding lang. So true naman yung coconut will survive kahit hindi mo siya i-weed, kahit hindi mo siya i-fertilize, kahit hindi mo siya diligin, magsusurvive siya. Kaya lang, it will perform better. Na ganon. And as I see it, ang government ay all out sila sa pag-support. Hindi ko lang alam kung saan ang disconnect, no? But I get to talk to them na they have these programs, no? They have these programs na ganyan. Hindi ko lang alam kung saan na di-disconnect na bakit hindi umaabot sa farmer. Yun yung medyo kaya ko din, may social aspect din, no? Generally nga, the coconut farmers rarely take care of the coconuts because even if they do not take care of them, they still give them yield. Okay? Kahit bumagyo yan, except mafe-fel, no? Except matutumba, After 2 years, kasi 44 months yung ano natin eh, diba? Hintayin mo lang yung 44 months, magbubulaklak uli yan. So, mga 2-3 years, na bagyo, basta hindi mamamatay, 2-3 years, bibigyan ka uli niya ng bunga. So, kaya siguro, medyo, yung farmers na, sige lang, binibigyan naman niya ako ng yield. Parang gano'n. So, I think, siguro, mas ano pa yung coconut talaga. Siguro nga, ang isang ano din, PCA is also coming up with yung mas diversified na products para may options yung ating farmers. So, hindi sila nakatali doon sa traditional na may kukuha sa farm, tapos dadalhin sa ganun, babayaran lang sila. Before kasi sa piso na coconut, 45 centavos lang yata pumupunta sa farmer. The rest ay pag piso yung coconut, 45 cents lang sa farmer. The rest ay dun sa harvester, sa nag-haul, sa ang tawag doon, nagtatapas, yung mga ganun. So, siguro, parang sa social na yun. So, I think, no?
I guess really talaga in every industry in the agricultural sector, there are really intersections really, ma'am, na nabanggit nyo. Social, economic, political issues na nakaka-apekto really sa paglaki talaga sa growth and development ng ating mga halaman. Thank you very much, Ma'am Connie. Saan po ba namin kayo pwedeng makontak if gusto namin magtanong or kung saan po kami pwedeng makipag-collaborate po sa inyong team?
Pwede naman sa email, pwede sa messenger. Ano ba? Sa messenger ko naman, or kaysa cellphone. Okay.
Siguro for our viewers and participants in Zoom, it's safe, I guess, to email the Institute of Crop Science and send a message na lang po sa College of Agriculture and Food Science Facebook page and the Institute of Crop Science. So at least we can direct your concerns and messages to Ma'am Connie. All right. Thank you very much, Ma'am Connie. To our participants, let's give Ma'am Connie a warm Zoom applause. Thank you very much for sharing your time and expertise. Now, at this point, at this juncture of our webinar this morning, let us award the certificate of appreciation to our speaker. All right. Let me read the citation to our tech. Can you please flash the certificate? All right. So let me read the citation. So College of Agriculture and Food Science, University of the Philippines, Los Baños, Laguna, Philippines, presents this certificate of appreciation to Consorcia Iriano for serving as the research person on the webinar entitled Project Saray, Phenology Studies, Crop Management, and Model Development for Coconut during the Aggie P.2 Tree of Life webinar series Part 2. Held on March 15, 2023 via Zoom. Given this 15th day of March 2023 at the College of Agriculture and Food Science, University of the Philippines, Los Baños, Laguna, Philippines. Signed by our Dean, Elpidio M. Agbisit Jr. Thank you very much, Ma'am Connie. Can we have a photo op with Ma'am Connie and her certificate to our tech team? Thank you very much. All right, Ma'am Connie, in 3, 2, 1. All right. Thank you very much. Now, at this point, I would like to invite everyone for the next episode of Aggie Pisto. We will be inviting another expert in coconut. Actually, the next episode of the Tree of Life will feature the research of the former Chancellor of UPLB and scientist, Dr. Luis Rey Velasco. I believe this will focus on the topic of coconut scale insect or yung cocolisap. Matatandaan natin na ito yung nag-plague talaga sa industriya ng coconut ng mga nakaraang. So our webinar will be held as well via Zoom. Please save the date of March 30, 2023 for our webinar with Dr. Luis Rey Velasco. So I will give you a few seconds to screenshot or take a photo of the details of our webinar. So you may register by scanning the QR code or typing the link to your respective browsers. Okay, give you 3, 2, 1. All right. Okay, so for the evaluation of our webinar, we have prepared a QR code as well for you to be scanned. Scan nyo lang po yung QR code so you will be directed to the evaluation form. So it will be essential for us para makuha po namin ang inyong responses sa evaluation na ito at para po kayo ay makatanggap ng certificate of attendance. All right, I will give you a few seconds to scan the evaluation link. Okay. So while scanning, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone for attending this webinar and making this possible. Of course, to the Institute of Crop Science, the College of Agriculture and Food Science, and to everyone who attended via Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. Okay, our tech staff will actually send the link na lang po sa inyo sa mga registrants, or you can just preview it sa Facebook Live. Sa Facebook po, pwede nyo naman po siyang balikan. And now, to formally close our program this morning, let us hear a message to the Associate Dean for Research and Extension of the College of Agriculture and Food Science, Dr. Lilia M. Fernando Cortez. Ma'am Lia, good morning.
Hello. Hello, Jan. Good morning. Good morning po sa lahat. It's always nice to learn from our colleagues, especially in UPLB, working on various researches, lalo na sa coconut. At least for today's episode with Dr. Riaño, we have a keyword to remember, the phenology of coconut. So we learned about the life cycle of various coconut varieties in relation sa isang malaking problem po natin, or challenge, yung climate change. So how crops like coconut adapt to the environment, like changes in the environment, tulad po ng sabi ni Ma'am Connie, mga variables like temperature, rainfall, kailangan na talaga nating tignan. And malaking factor, yung na-mention din kanina, yung soil type. So we know may mga changes na rin dun sa characteristics ng soil natin, depende siguro sa geography. So I hope we can also work with the Bureau of it's a BSWM, Bureau of Soils and Water Management, para lalo pa natin matulungan ng ating mga farmers. So we also talked about how our coconut farmers take care of the coconut tree. So yan yata isang naging concern when we have the coconut scale insect. Parang tao, hindi po immune, or medyo hindi healthy yung ibang coconut natin, kaya madaling natamaan ng sakit. So it's time for us to also take care yung sa ating mga tanim. So exciting work ahead, which I hope our young scientists tulad ni Jan can go into using probably mga age ninyo, like IoT or Internet of Things in application sa ating agriculture. So yun ang gift na meron ng ating younger generations na tingin ko kailangan ng ating mga farmers. So thank you again, Ma'am Connie, for sharing the work of your team under Saray. So the Philippines, being one of the largest producer of coconut in the world, should really focus on improving its propagation or production of coconut to boost the industry. Together, let's empower our farmers. Sa totoo, tayo pa nga minsan din na researcher natututo sa ating mga farmers when we work with them. So mabuhay po ang ating mga coconut farmers. Lastly, I'd like to commend and thank our organizers, of course our hardworking Dean, Dr. P.2, the iCrops webinar team with Engineer Claire, Ate Meggie, Danto, and of course our dear MC for today, Mr. Jan Lawas. Our angels sa Dean's office, sina Kat, Arthur, Rachel, and the full Tree of Life team. Salamat po sa lahat, and our dear participants. See you po next time sa ating susunod na episode. Salamat po, and let's enjoy the rest of the day. Jan?
Thank you very much, Doc Leah, for that message. And now to our participants, Arthur actually sent the link for the evaluation. Click nyo na lang po yun para ma-redirect kayo. So thank you very much everyone for attending the first episode of Aggie P.2 and the second installment of the Tree of Life. So everyone, see you on March 30 for the third installment of the Tree of Life webinar series. So pag-usapan naman po natin ang coconut scale insect. At I hope na reinvigorate, mas natikal po ang inyong curiosity and of course ang inyong enthusiasm to learn more about coconut and bakit po natin siya tinatawag na Tree of Life. Once again, I am John Lawas, your MC, your host and moderator for this webinar. Maraming salamat po and enjoy the rest of the day. Thank you very much.
A 112 years ago, the UP Board of Regents had a vision to develop their true firstborn college that will spearhead national development through agriculture. At the foot of Mount Makiling, Edwin B. Copeland, together with 7 faculty and 12 students, embarked on the journey to create the UP College of Agriculture, or UPCA. Through its 112 years of existence, the college has produced over 1,000 technologies and variety of plants and animals, 9 national scientists, over 30 outstanding young scientists, and more than 18,000 graduates contributing to agricultural development. UPCA, now College of Agriculture and Food Science, or CAFS, has been continuously contributing to nation building through its instruction, research, and extension function. A mere 10 years after establishment, the college was able to start breeding works with the production of sugarcane varieties with high productivity and resistance to Fiji and mosaic disease. In the 1920s, the importance of agriculture was intensified and UPCA was recognized as neighboring countries began sending their students to Los Baños because of the high quality of education. In the 1930s, breeds with superior characteristics such as the Burke Halipig, Los Baños Cantonese chicken, and filament cattle were developed. The 1960s was a fruitful decade for research. Makapuno, a coconut cultivar often made into a dessert, was pioneered and perfected. Meanwhile, the Dairy Training and Research Institute was the first in the country to freeze buffalo semen, paving the way for artificial insemination of local carabaos. Along with the establishment of UPLB in the 70s, the college received the prestigious Ramon Magsaysay Award for International Understanding, Asia's counterpart for the Nobel Peace Prize. In the same decade, the C4 plants were developed. The soil test kits were produced in support of the Masagana 99 program, and the mango induction technique was introduced. Continuing the production of quality research outputs in the 1980s, techniques to minimize post-harvest losses, the accelerated fish sauce manufacturing process, and the rapid test kit for the detection of pesticide residue on vegetables were developed. The 1990s saw many new varieties across species or crop types, including Sinta papaya, the first Philippine-bred hybrid, UPLB Gold, a durian variety, and Doña Amelita, a musaenda named after the wife of former President Fidel Ramos. The award-winning National Corn-Based Farmer Scientist RDE Training Program, or FSTP, was also